Well, let's see if we remember how to do this. I did not realize 5 weeks off here. Hussey and I were going to kind of stack our bye weeks, a couple busy weeks here. Ended up a little bit extended, and spoiler alert, we might have a couple more. But I think once we get really past Labor Day, and they always say, the CFL season doesn't really count till Labor Day, which is always phenomenal marketing, in my opinion, for a football league. But we are back here at least for 1 week. Tons to get to. I mean, literally, like, Hussey, first off, how are you doing?
Doing good, Reed. Thanks for having me as always. Really glad to be back. I mean, it was a big break, big hiatus, but again, a lot of news to talk about and catch up on.
Yeah, so if you're back here, like I said, like and subscribe. We're back for a week, and then it's probably 2 weeks off. And then once we get into September, I got to go back now to Boston for work. I was there for pleasure, back again. But if you like all this CFL Week 11 recap, kind of mid-season review here, however we want to brand that, please like and subscribe when we get to 4,000 subscribers. I think what I'm going to do, UFL doesn't want us doing ticket giveaways. So I think we're going to do custom Royal Retros jerseys. We'll do a CFL one, and then we'll do a UFL one. So it'll probably be 2 different winners there. I'll deal with Dustin about that. But the nice thing is I can just pay him, and then he'll send it out directly. So like and subscribe if you like any of this. But we've done like Doug Flutie jerseys, and we've done the UFL custom, and we can do XFL stuff, anything. But we'll get 2 different things like that, and we'll get all that situated. So like and subscribe. Jason and I have a lot of rants we're going to get to here. I watched the great games. I watch all the games here. I'm all caught up. But I mean, even just news of the week, I think we would have enough to kind of, fill this whole thing. We won't do play-by-play breakdowns of all this, but ton to get to. This has to be the craziest week 10-11 ever of a season. I mean, normally this is like the summer doldrums, right?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people in the summer, it's a slow news month. I mean, it's kind of like the dead of the season, and like you said, it usually gets going after Labor Day when NFL cuts go, and you start to see a lot more movement there. But yeah, it's been a very, very hectic week in the CFL.
So we have Larry Thompson, right? New Elks ownership. They get their first big win. I did not realize that was such an ass whooping. And I saw kind of the score, and I was tracking. We were out of town. And then you said you were at the game for that, right? The McLeod Bethel Thompson we'll get to that because it's always great to bench your starting quarterback and then have your backup get hurt and then have to bring back in Bo Levi. That was interesting. We have Chris Jones now. Chris Jones is the defensive assistant, I guess, for the Ticats. I guess the Edmonton Elks beat them so bad they said we got to bring Chris Jones in here. We've got Chuck Kelly returning. We have the Nathan Rourke. I have a lot to say about that. Anything else major news I'm missing here? It feels like there's a ton of stuff.
I think you covered it, everything except for the games themselves.
So do we want to talk through this Nathan Rourke thing first? Because I really thought, like, okay, I was out of town. The Lions got killed by the Bombers, shut out. I go on Rod's show. We're on vacation. I kind of poo-poo Rick Campbell, and I don't know if he's going to be the one to get us over the hump. Us as in the BC Lions. I got a lot of feedback from that internally, externally, a lot of comments, everything. I felt so bamboozled by this Nathan Rourke of it all. And because it made me forget how terrible this team is in and of itself, right? I feel like I bought into the hype. I have a story for all this, but what was your initial reaction to this Nathan Rourke? I know we're a couple days late with the initial whatever, but I want to get your thoughts because this really was a whirlwind.
Yeah, it was just wow. Like when I saw the notification when I was on my lunch at work, I was just like, wow. I didn't expect things to, for him to come back to the CFL this quickly. I did expect him to come back just given the fact he was really bouncing around the NFL the last couple of years to come back in 2025, but not for this season. And to see him start the first week while he's back is a whole nother thing altogether. But I think it's in general, it was a great news, obviously, for the CFL. I think this is the single most marketable player that this league will probably ever have, just given the fact that he's a Canadian. He's an absolute stud at the position besides this game yesterday. But I think, I just was really pleasantly surprised by that news. And like I said, I was even more shocked that he was starting the very first week.
So we get out, we're seeing our family, we're out at the cabin by the lake, and we had gone in the night before, and I always go a little too heavy kind of the first night of vacation, right? Might have a couple extra glasses of wine or whatever. We're sitting by the campfire. And I wake up the next day. Dorothy wakes me up. She goes, "We need to go to the store. We had forgotten some stuff, and we're trying to get, breakfast." She goes, "We need to go to the store right now." I pull up my phone. I see, so I'm a little delirious. I'm trying to get up. I see the Nathan Rourke news. I see JJ McCarthy likely out for the season. And I'm like, what in God's earth is going on? I can't process this. I go downstairs. I'm stuck in the house with 9 people. Nobody cares about this at all. I'm like walking down the stairs and go, you guys don't understand. Probably the biggest story in a decade just happened here in the CFL in terms of Nathan Rourke coming back. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, you guys don't understand. And it really took me forever. And there's been a lot of, we watched the games last night, was really excited about that. There's been a lot of criticism over, okay, was Nathan started too soon? Like you said, he came in on Wednesday and 3 practices. And what did we expect? And what did we expect with Chad Kelly and all of that? But like I said, to me, I viewed this as, oh, wow, the team realizes this is make or break, right? This is the Grey Cup. We need to go do this. We got to bring in Nathan. We're going to pay him $800,000 next year. I mean, it's just crazy. And the marketing budgets, we're not going to pay all that, but everything. And I thought, okay, this team is really serious about winning, right? They realize we're hosting the Grey Cup. We have all these people. And Nathan Rourke aside, and I want to get your thoughts on his performance, but I posted my thoughts on Twitter last night because I got home. We watched half the game here, and then I hadn't seen my mom in 2 weeks. So we go over there. I'm like, do you have CBS Sports Network? And we pull it up. I'm watching the game. This is the same team. This is the same team. And it kills me to think that you would go out and make this work, right? You spend the money and the time and all this kind of stuff to bring him in. I wish Nathan Rourke could play defense. Can we get him on that side of the ball? Like, I don't understand how many times. I don't know if this is a Rick issue or a Ryan Phillips issue or a whoever's issue. How many times do I need to see 4 guys hanging off of Brady Oliveira, unable to tackle him? How many times do I need to see BC defense leaving someone completely wide open? Like, this is still the same team. You can put Nathan Rourke in there. I don't care if he would have had 3 weeks to practice. That was only half the issue with this team. And it was just so frustrating to me because it's the same team. And I bought into this, like, oh, they're really serious about this. The same with the Mariners. Oh man, we signed for Randy Rosarena. Like, we're really serious about winning. Doesn't seem that way to me. Seems like they came out just as flat as they always do. First off, what was your thoughts on Nathan's performance? Because I think it left some to be desired.
Yeah, he looked like a guy that just got there this week. It doesn't matter what name it is. I think that, in time, he'll obviously become the player that he was before leaving for the NFL. But, it just shows you that, like, you do need time to practice with your receivers. Winnipeg is a bad matchup for BC, regardless of when they played the last several years. And it's quite obvious that Winnipeg, despite the records going into this game, and we'll get into it later, but Winnipeg's kind of creeping up on them in the standings now all of a sudden. And, Winnipeg just owns BC the last few years. So I don't know what BC needs to do to get around that. I think that I was talking to you last night. I think their defense has declined from the last couple of years. I think that they made a couple of interesting decisions in the offseason. Obviously, some of them out of their control with Matthew Betts going to the NFL, and that looks like he may stay there with his performance this weekend. So, I don't know what BC needs to do going forward, but I think that, it was a struggling performance from Nathan Rourke on Sunday.
And, I think it was Farhan had put out, okay, we're selling all these tickets. We're opening up. We're going to add all this. It's going to be 30,000 plus. And, I had tweeted out, when people say that BC only cares about concerts. I know they had that Fred. I don't even know who that guy was that played that. Like, my brother could have done a juggling act at halftime for all I care. I have no context for any of that or what that was. But to think that you get all these people back in, like, this is the time, like, we're getting all these, like, we're undefeated at home. We got Nathan coming in, all this stuff. And just to poop on all that goodwill is just insane to me. And I cannot figure out, the inability with this team to show up. You had Winnipeg on the ropes. Now they've won the season series, right? Isn't that the same with the Elks now, where these pivotal West Division matchups? I don't, if you can't show up at home with Nathan for BC, and God bless Nathan for taking the blunt of everything and saying, well, this is my fault. Nathan doesn't play defense. This wasn't all Nathan's fault. I mean, BC couldn't stop a nosebleed. How many times does Winnipeg need to walk the ball down the field? Like I said, Oliveira, unable to be tackled. I saw this last year in the West Division Final. I saw this when they lost. What was that in October last year? Like, I've seen this every time. It's just, I just can't figure out why this team is unable to show up at big moments.
Yeah, and I think another thing is their offensive line just cannot compete in these moments. And I think that Winnipeg is one thing with them. They've shown the last couple of weeks, they're starting to look like that old Winnipeg Blue Bombers defense with, Willie Jefferson really starting to pick things up as we get towards the second half of the season. So I think that's such a huge thing for the Blue Bombers and a scary thing for the rest of the CFL. But yeah, BC's offensive line, a major weakness for years now. I think the last couple of years, they were a little bit better, but when it comes to these matchups against Winnipeg, they just can't run the ball and they cannot protect the passer. And it doesn't matter who's in there. Vernon Adams obviously got shouted a few weeks ago against the Blue Bombers as well. So like I said, I don't know what the Bombers or the Lions should do to get over this hump.
And I mean, and it was dang near a shutout anyway. I mean, I know they had that garbage time touchdown at the end. Nathan wasn't even in the game, right? It was that Chase, Bryce, whatever. Like, I don't even, the guys in the group chat, oh, this guy on the sub, that's outside of my purview of, the long history of that. But, I mean, you were held to a field goal for 3.5 quarters here. I just can't figure out, as someone that lived through the Mariners here, having the 10-game lead, blowing that 10-game lead, and now being 4 games behind the Astros going into tonight. I mean, this was your chance. BC's back to 500, right? Winnipeg's 1 game behind. They're 4-6. I just, you don't have that many opportunities here. And I just can't figure out, Nathan Rourke or anything aside, it just seemed like this team had no energy showing into it. And they always say the meme now, like, somehow Palpatine returned, like Winnipeg's back, like they never lost. And it's frustrating as someone that was hoping, God bless Saskatchewan here for kind of holding that out. But as someone that was hoping to see, kind of a difference in the West Division, so disappointed with this and just really disappointed that they let them get back in because they really could have shut the door and moved on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to get wild. As you see with the standings here, it's getting really close from top to bottom. I think it's really becoming anybody's ball game the second half of the season. So I'm really excited for that. I think that, BC still has a chance to right the ship, and we'll see how they respond next week. I think, who do they play next week? Ottawa, I think. I think they play Ottawa back-to-back because I think they play them in Victoria the week after that. So really pivotal matchups coming up against Ottawa. And Ottawa all of a sudden has the second best record in the CFL. So that's no easy games either. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how BC responds from this. Like I said, I think Nathan will be better. We will expect him to see him. I will expect him to be better going forward, but I think that these performances against Winnipeg, the physicality, just not being able to match them from a physical standpoint, despite their offseason changes, is very disappointing. And it's just interesting how it mirrors last year because I think BC goes into Winnipeg early in the season last year, beats them, and everybody thinks, oh, it's BC's year to kind of take the West. And then they lose the rest of the season series. So, I mean, it's worth noting that happened last year as well.
And the real quick, on the touchdown Victoria, right? Because you had brought that up here, coming up the week after. I remember back when that was announced, and we have a big wedding that next day on the 1st. Labor Day weekend's always really tough for me, and that, like I said, I think I got to fly out of town the day after. I, for a long time, had lamented, oh man, this would be really nice to go see this, go there and say, I don't want to pay to go see this team right now at all. I tweeted last night, I said, imagine you're one of the people that paid to see this. And like you said, a total mirror example, same thing as last year. Yeah, looking strong. They come back. And the scary thing about it is, so they're paying Nathan, what, $250, I think, this year, the marketing budget, however we want to stretch all that. They got 600 grand in this kid the next 2 years. I know he is going to be better. I'm not like, I really don't even care that he came in and played sloppy and some of his reads. Like, that doesn't bother me. It's everything else around it. It's receivers being unable to catch the ball. It's people being able to tackle. It's being able to stop the run. And when you can't do that now, I don't know how you're going to do that next year when you're paying Nathan Rourke $800,000. I don't know how you're going to do that the next year. I already saw tweets out, when they announced all the Nathan stuff and like, what do they deal with Vernon? And, Rick Campbell, wow, that's a good problem to have. And we'll figure that out, whatever. But if you can't win, it doesn't like, I don't know how we're supposed to fix this when we can't do it this year, how we're going to do it the next 2 years when we're paying this kid even more money.
Yeah, exactly. I think that when you look at it, I think they'll never have as deep of a team as they had a couple of years ago when Nathan was here. I think, when he was making like, what was it, 75K, and they were able to really build the rest of the roster around him and have all those playmakers. They still have a really good receiving core, but they don't have some of the guys that they used to have, like Dominic Rhymes, for example. So, I mean, I think it's not just that. Like I said, the defense has taken a step back the last couple of years, got a little older in a few spots, a little bit different in a few spots. So, I mean, this is not the same team. And like I said, they're a 5 team right now. They had a really good start to the season, it looked like, but the last few weeks, I think they've lost 3 in a row now. So it's been tough sledding for the BC Lions. And with Ottawa playing how they are right now, I mean, it could be a 5-game losing streak for BC. Who knows?
And they've lost 4 in a row because they lost to Calgary before the bye week. So they haven't won a game since week 6. So, I mean, they haven't won a game since July 13th. Last question, because again, I don't want this to be a totally rag on the Lions the whole time. But I posted some of my stuff last night and everything else. But I'm curious your thoughts on the contract here for Nathan, because like I said, you couldn't win with him on the cheap, and now you want to win with him on the expensive. It's like we see in the NFL all the time. Okay, the Bengals get to the Super Bowl, and then we're going to pay Joe Burrow like a Super Bowl winning quarterback when we didn't even win in the first place, right? It's the same with the Eagles. We see that. It's the same. I mean, geez, Trevor Lawrence. I mean, look at all the guys that are getting paid too. All these guys that, you're paying these guys. You pay Nathan like he's won 3 Grey Cups coming in here. We're paying $800,000. Thoughts on that? Because it's 600 on the books, right? And then another 200, whatever, in the marketing. Thoughts on that, just in terms of that's a major contract.
I think that's just the unfortunate reality of having a star quarterback. And like I said, I think that because of who he is and being perhaps the most marketable player the team and the league have ever had, I think that they had to give him this contract. They were not going to let him go to another team, even though he definitely could have. He wanted to be in BC, and so they were going to give him that contract and figure out the rest later. So, and I think another part of leverage he has in this is that he counts as one of your Canadian starters as well. And we always know from watching the contracts given out every year during free agency that Canadian starter always gets paid a little bit extra of a premium because it really helps your flexibility on the rest of the roster. So I think I was kind of expecting Nathan to really break the bank. Honestly, I thought maybe they would even give him a little bit more than this. I thought that he was going to be able to really leverage CFL teams into giving him a massive contract when he came back to the CFL, and rightfully so with the performance he had before going to the NFL. So those are just my thoughts on Rourke.
And with this marketing stuff, because I've seen a lot of, criticisms, positive and negative, kind of whatever. And like, it's something they added in, right, with the CBA where they can roll, you got to do so many media appearances, will pay you. Is that just Amar Doman? Is he just writing? I mean, is that just coming out of him and kind of circumventing all of that? Is that your understanding of how that works?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's just up to the ownership of every given team to spend as much as they want on that. I think they were saying on the 3 Nation podcast that they are planning to are working on closing the loophole of that, maybe putting a cap on how much they can spend for marketing money. But right now, that's kind of how it is.
I'm fine with it. I think it's better for the league, right? And I think I remember when we had Amar on years ago, and then after we got done, I looked up like, what is Amar Doman's net worth? And I was like, oh my god, like this is so Amar, some of these guys, Larry Thompson, kind of all the we got money to go around here, but again. to concise it around, you could have the greatest quarterback in the world, but if you can't tackle anybody, it doesn't make a difference, and you're going to give up, all these points anyway. Any other thoughts? First off, on the Lions' performance, and then we can talk Winnipeg. Anything else specifically from that game? Because then we'll probably do Chad Kelly because the Argos were off, and then we'll kind of get into everything else because we'll talk Elks and all that.
No, not too many extra thoughts. Just that it was really ugly from a BC standpoint.
Winnipeg, like I said, regaining power here. Calera still not great. I thought it was interesting. Winnipeg tweeted that after the game, and in context of like their great defense, like 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, whatever. I'm like, Caleros has 5 passing touchdowns during the season. I don't know if I would. Yeah. Let's be fair here. I don't know if Caleros is having quite the MOP caliber season as well, but I don't know. Like you said, Winnipeg defense good enough to carry them. Are they back fully? Do you need to see more from them? I guess, how do you kind of gauge them here in terms of the West Division?
Well, I'm with you. I think Caleres definitely is still not all the way back to what we've seen the past couple of years from him. So I think if they are going to make a run in terms of winning the West Division this year, whether that's finishing first in the regular season or ultimately going on a run in the playoffs, I think it's going to have to be, a defensive-led team with Brady Oliveira like really turning into that 2023 MOP level. Brady Oliveira, I think that is really the key, and I think you're starting to see elements of that. You got Kenny Lawler back in this game, so that definitely helps Caleres get better. I think he definitely has upticked his production the last couple of weeks, so that's definitely good to see. But like I said, it's not really that MOP caliber Zach Caleres that we've been used to seeing ever since he arrived in Winnipeg. So like I said, I think it's going to have to be more of a defensive story in Winnipeg, and they're really, really playing well right now.
Yeah, Kenny Lawler looked great coming back. It just kills me. Like I said, every time a Winnipeg receiver catches the ball wide open and running down, I'm like, how? Like that was supposed to be, and I think it was when BC got blown out. Winnipeg like, oh, the Donut Boys are back, ha ha ha. I'm like, so it happens. They got high in their supply last year, and they had the bye and coming out. I don't know when BC's off again here to kind of figure out a regroup. Like you said, they're going into Ottawa and then hosting that back to back. And then they're going to Montreal. We'll talk through Montreal as well. I mean, they don't get a week off till week 16 here. Then they got to host Toronto. I mean, this is really put up or shut up. Let's talk about the Chad Kelly of it all. We don't need to go super deep dive, but just he's back. They're going to be playing here coming up, hosting Saskatchewan. That should be a really exciting game here. Thoughts on that? I know he had to meet with Randy, and then they had he's kind of like a one strike and you're out kind of deal here. What do you make here? Him rejoining Toronto, and how are they in the standings here? 5-4. I don't know if they can go undefeated the rest of the way here, but what do you make of this whole Chad Kelly coming back?
Well, ignoring all the obviously personal questions around Kelly and what he did or didn't do, this definitely makes the Argos a scary football team down the stretch. And I think that considering their quarterback play this far, like Cameron Dukes had a couple of really good games to start the season and then really fell off a cliff. And then Nick Arbuckle got into a couple of games. For them to be still sitting at 5-4, that is pretty damn remarkable. And it really shows you, especially given all the players that they lost in the offseason, because this team got gutted in free agency. This is a really talented football team. And if they can, hit the ground running with Chad Kelly at quarterback again, this could be, a team that goes on a Grey Cup run this year. I really believe that. Hoping not to see that as a Ticats fan, but I think that the reality is this team was 16-3, including playoffs last year with Chad Kelly as the starter. That's very hard to ignore.
Well, like you said, with the whole Nathan Rourke of it all too, it'll be curious, does he need a couple weeks to kind of get back into it? Because, Nathan was in, I don't know how much that affects, he was going through his mentality, right, and getting cut and getting signed and doing the preseason and doing the kind of that. He didn't look great for the Falcons in the preseason. I know Chad's been kind of sitting, right? I know he's been doing some light team drills here lately, but he's been pretty disconnected, right, as far as my understanding. Yeah. So I'll be curious, Nathan kind of playing American preseason football, doing whatever that looks like, versus Chad here that's maybe just kind of been not on the couch, but certainly not playing in the preseason game with the Falcons the week before. It'd be interesting to see, does he have a harder time coming back up here than Nathan did? Because you would think if Nathan's struggling here week one, coming in and kind of adapting, I think Chad's going to take a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I just read a quote this afternoon from Ryan Dinwiddie saying that the way that Nathan Rourke played last night, just given the fact he played 5 days after or so after he signed with BC, really it affects his thinking going into Thursday against Saskatchewan with Chad Kelly. I think that he had something about maybe using a 2-quarterback system on Thursday, just kind of ease Chad Kelly back into it. But like you said, he hasn't seen live bullets in a long time, all the way back to that horrible East final that he threw several interceptions in. So I think it should be interesting to see how he plays out of the gate. I think that, like I said, I think the plan might be to ease him back into it, but we'll have to see what the Argos do and how Chad Kelly looks in his return.
Well, and I'm just pulling up the game tracker here so we can get to it after, but the Saskatchewan defense is pretty scary right now with Corey Mace. I mean, I think that this is kind of, right? I think that this, to come in and you're not playing against the BC Lions defense. I mean, you're playing against a team that actually knows how to get after the quarterback and tackle and do everything else. So, I'm really curious. I mean, I think Dinwiddie, I trust Dinwiddie, right, getting kind of Chad up to speed a little bit more than maybe I do Rick with all that. I don't know. I'm so out on Rick Campbell right now. I can't even stand it. Like, I don't want to get any more hate about everything, but I'm really having a hard time with it. Like, I think Dinwiddie, can maybe read that a little bit better going in than Nathan. Like, oh, it's incredible. He's had 10 completions and whatever practice, and he looks great. And he comes into the game, and I mean, I don't even I'd have to even pull up what the stats were, but he did not. Nathan did not have a tremendous stat line here coming out of the game. What was just curious? What was his? 8 of 25, 126, two interceptions.
Yikes.
I mean, certainly not be. Look at Chase here, 6 of 6. Maybe we need to see Chase in action here. But okay, we've done. All right, so we've done all that. Let's talk Larry Thompson, the Elks, because I wanted to talk about this homicide I saw here on YouTube this morning when I was watching the Edmonton Elks Ticats game. But Larry Thompson, owner, seems excited, right? Is this good? It's certainly no Victor, and I know Victor wasn't the owner, but certainly no Victor Cui kind of taking over the world here. It seems like a good old boy, Edmonton Elks season ticket holder. It's got money. What's your read of the situation? Is that do I have a good handle?
Yeah, I think that, my impressions of watching that, the opening press conference is that he's not the best, public speaker or anything like that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, who cares, right? If he's going to financially support the team and, be a stable owner that, doesn't do the whole David Stern, David Stern with Gary.
Oh, Gary with it. Oh, you're talking Stern.
Sorry, I'm thinking of the NBA commissioner, but as long as he's not, an unstable owner that, provides a distraction to the team and can financially support this team and give it the reinvestment that it needs, I think that's the important part. And I think another part of the conversation I saw some people bringing up was his age, but I think that he's only 65 or something like that. A lot of people thought he was older than that. I think the worry there is that it might be a thing like Sid Spiegel and Gary Stern situation where there's not really a succession if something happens there. So I've heard that the family is very committed to potentially taking the team over after. Assuming if something something terrible did happen with Larry Thompson. So I think that I'm not too concerned about it. I think that I'm glad the Elks have that financial backing now, and hopefully things will get better in the short term in Edmonton.
You're like, he's 6. It's kind of like Benjamin Button. Like, people say I'm 12, but I look a lot older. Like, no, he does. He looks way older than 65. I mean, oh my God. I didn't know how we've been out of time. I didn't have time to look up. I'm trying to figure out what's his net worth and everything just to kind of get a handle on it. But he looks old. That's a rough 65. The whole they're using the double E logo, they're rebranding to the Esks. I mean, this is You got it right. I mean, it's like I live through this with the Commanders all the time, and I mean, they ask our people all the time, when do you rebrand? We bring in Josh Harris, we get to do ownership. They're like, we're just trying to win football games. We don't care about that. I mean, I'm so over this. You could call them the circus clowns for all I care at this point. But thoughts on that? Because I just feel like you can't revert back at this point. But I'm just curious your thoughts.
I think it would be a massive mistake. Frankly, I think it would be a disaster if they were to go back to the old name or even change the name again. I think that Elks is fine. I think that, yes, it may not be the most intimidating or ideal name for a pro sports team in the world, but ultimately this is the Edmonton football franchise. Call it whatever you want. The people that want to call it Eskimos, they can call it whatever they want. It's still a football franchise, CFL that plays in Edmonton, and ultimately people blaming the name change for the poor results and the decline in attendance. I think it's just frankly ridiculous, because the attendance was declining before, even when they were the Eskimos, and the poor performance of the team was already starting to show, not to the degree it has since COVID, but I think at the end of the day, going back to the old name would be a big mistake in my opinion, because it would really just be kind of a step backwards, I think, for the league.
I will say, and because I watch a lot of this stuff now on YouTube, having watched the BC Lions game yesterday here before I had to go, we need a new animation, like the whole with like the blue bombers and like the tiger and the like. We need to revamp all that. If we can get Larry can donate some money to the cause, or Amar, whatever. Like, I don't care what you call the Elks, but you got it. That whole opening animation just needs to be. That looks like it came out from 1998. Like, we got to figure that out. Let's get to, so you were at this game. So speaking of Edmonton, then we'll talk to Chris Jones and kind of all that. This was a bizarre game, right? Because first off, you were there. How was the game from your perspective? Because this I didn't realize this was such an ass whooping until I really sat down this morning.
This was an awful football game from the Ticats perspective. This game, first of all, I mean, just even beyond the football game itself, just the first play from scrimmage, Luther Nabanu takes a very, I would say even a dirty hit from, I forget who the Elks defender was, but needed medical attention. It was really serious situation. You saw that, both teams were kind of huddled around, Hakunabanu in that situation. And, everybody was very concerned. Luckily, he's all right, but we didn't know that at the time. And then there was a bit of a delay because I didn't know this, but the ambulance cannot leave the stadium until another ambulance comes. And so there was a bit of delay in that. I think it took about 20 minutes for another ambulance to come and show up and be ready to be at the game. So, that was a bizarre start to the game. Glad Hakunabanu's all right. And then once the game gets restarted, Taylor Powell immediately gets hurt. Concussed, and I think he had to go to the hospital as well, but he's all right as well. So strangely enough, we got to see Bo Levi Mitchell, and it didn't go so well for the Ticats in this game. It really was over by the end of the first quarter, and that's been the case far too often this year for the Ticats. Think back to the game against BC where I think it was 14-0 before the 10-minute mark of the first quarter. So, the Ticats defense, just been a struggle all season long for them. Probably the worst defense I've seen in the CFL in a long time, at least in the last 5 years. I can't remember a team that's looked this poor defensively, this bad, in being out of position in so many different spots. The defensive line can't get any pressure. The secondary is just so out of position. Like I said, can't stop the run either. James Rankin had a field day against the Ticats defense in this one. So I believe it was 32-3 at halftime. So yes, like I said, it was basically over very early in this game, and very frustrating as a Ticats fan just to see them show up like this at home against like what a lot of people thought was the worst team in the CFL, but quite clearly that is the Ticats right now. I think the Ticats have earned that crown, that much desired crown as the worst team in the CFL right now, and I don't think it's by evidence of this game is very close right now.
Yeah, they say, if you're at the poker table and you're looking around for the mark and you can't identify who the mark is, chances are it's you. Yeah, if you're trying to figure out the worst team in the CFL, spoiler alert, Ticats, it's probably you here. I will say I'll take Rod Smith and his dad jokes over like Dustin Nielsen any day watching these games. He's like, Dustin Rankin really ranking up in the standings for the running back. Like, I'll appreciate that more than, oh my God, that's incredible. But this was, it was just so weird because, like we said, I kind of had to process this. I turned the game on. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, Trey Ford's hurt, right? It's ribs. Okay, we're bringing McLeod back. Okay, that makes sense. And then, okay, we bench Bo Levi. No one really knows why we've done that. Okay, Taylor Powell's playing. And then, like you said, the best thing in the world, like, let's bench the starting quarterback and then have the backup immediately hurt. Then we got to go back to him. That's not going to be awkward at all. And then you even saw Harrison Frost here, who he rode the bench for the Sea Dragons in the XFL 2 years. I mean, he was with the Sea Dragons. I don't think he saw – really? I don't believe he took a snap behind Danucci, but he was like our second, third string quarterback there. So he even was playing the garbage time there. Did they just give up on Bo at that point? Did they just say, Bo, you need to protect yourself?
Well, to be honest, I think I actually had left by that point in the fourth quarter. I had my buddy came all the way up from Ottawa, and I was joking with him all week. I'm like, brought you all this way to see the two worst teams in the CFL go at it. But, so we ended up heading out of there a little early. It was just really a disgusting performance. That's just really hard to see. And I usually never leave games early, but it was just too tough to watch at this point. It was just the fumbles were one thing that really stood out in this game. It seemed like the Ticats had at least five fumbles in this game that were really just errors. And I think, like I said, I think the turnovers and the penalties, and I think that's what Scott Milanovich said as well last week when he was talking heading into this game about what's defined their season to this point. It's turnovers and penalties. It's been a very sloppy and undisciplined team. And I think a lot of that obviously falls back on the coach. But at the end of the day, I think the players have a huge role to play in that as well.
There was a game last year where Edmonton, it was early in the season, and Edmonton Oilers came into the Kraken, and I think they were up 3-0 before Dorothy had even gone to the restroom and gotten a wine and sat down. And I always want to leave, and Dorothy or whoever, oh no, we paid a lot of money, but I won't spend any more money there. I won't buy any beer. I won't buy any food. I do a sit-in hunger protest. So I don't leave the game, but they don't get any more of my money that night. You haven't earned any of that. The big news, Chris Jones coming in, is a defensive assistant. Edmonton bought him out, so the Ticats don't have to pay him. That seems weird, right?
It is. And on one hand, part of me just says it just adds to the circus and that this isn't going to make anything better. But the other part of me says that it literally can't get any worse with how this defense has been playing, and that Chris Jones, we know he can't be a head coach anymore. It's quite clear that he's been an awful head coach the last couple of stops in the CFL, going back to Saskatchewan and this previous stint in Edmonton. But he has been a successful defensive coordinator in this league and defensive play caller. But funny enough, the last time he was a defensive coordinator, defensive play caller, before he was a head coach was in 2021 with the Argos. And the last time he was on the field, Dane Evans went 16 for 16 in the second half and led the Ticats to a Grey Cup. So not exactly a good lasting memory of Chris Jones being a defensive coordinator in recent years, but he does have a lot of experience. Milanovich is very familiar with him from, I believe, his time in Toronto. So it should be interesting to see how it works out. But like I said, I think a lot of it, in my mind, just goes to adding to the circus.
Yeah, and I love Chris Jones as a person, right? And I think that's always misconstrued. And it's the same thing with Rick Campbell or anything else. You need to be able to separate kind of what they're doing on the field versus the person. Chris Jones was on, what was that, 2 years ago, and he was scouting talent down in the U.S. and just the nicest, most giving guy with his time and walking around LA on the phone to it. It's nothing against all that. But yeah, you come in here. I like you said, I don't know if it can make it any worse. I was proud of my tweet when Farhan said that, because Edmonton had bought him out, he didn't need to seek permission to kind of apply for the position. And I said, well, as someone that's watched him coach a professional football team for the last 3 years, he doesn't have my permission here to be involved in this. I don't want to see him anymore. I need to have him off my thing. But like you said, it can't be any worse, but it does feel like it adds to adding to the circus here. And I don't know, man. The Ticats are just really atrocious, like really bad. And Bo isn't playing bad. I mean, how do you, right? You know, they benched him for Taylor, right? Taylor got hurt. We talked through all that, but like, because we haven't talked, were you surprised that Bo got the bench? And then he comes back here and he plays fine. I mean, he had the 200 receptions, but Bo has never been the problem like he was last year. At least the injuries surrounding the quarterback situation were last year.
Yeah, I was shocked when they pulled the trigger so quickly in that game against Montreal a couple of weeks ago to put Powell in. But I do kind of see Scott Milanovich's point. I think that what he pointed to was obviously the turnovers, and Bo, even though he has thrown a lot of touchdowns this year, though a lot of them came in that one game against Edmonton, I feel like Bo has thrown a lot of bad interceptions this year. He has been prone, and especially the last few weeks, I think it's really just reached a boiling point. And when it's not leading to victories, despite how bad the defense is, I think a lot of that obviously falls back on the quarterback. And, the fact that he's an older quarterback and this team doesn't look like it's going anywhere this year, I don't know how many more games he's going to start for the Ticats this year. I mean, we'll have to see what the health status of Taylor Powell is and how much he plays down the stretch. But I don't think Bo has many starts left for the Ticats. Maybe he starts the next couple of weeks. But once you start getting to that, 2-10, 2-11, or 3-11, or whatever the record is by mid-September, I think that's when you start trying to get into that evaluating player stage of your season if you're a team like the Ticats. And I think maybe you start to see guys like Harrison Frost and maybe even Talia Tagovailoa come in and get their chance.
That would be cool. So that would be something to get excited about. Yeah, and I think Bo just the team's ass, and he's like, I gotta try, I gotta do whatever I can here and run and throw and get it in the tight windows and force the ball, because you're like, I can't trust my defense, right? I don't know when the heck we're gonna get back on the field again here. Like, I just need to push down the field. The other question, I guess, I guess I will say too, with the whole, because I was watching, of course, now we're back into preseason here with the NFL, and they're talking about the Jets, and how Aaron Rodgers isn't playing in the preseason, and he's going to be there at the game, week one, and with last year and all of that. And I decided, now, what a disaster both these quarterbacks were, because I don't expect anything from Aaron Rodgers this year. He hasn't played football in a year. He's, older than I am. And then with the same with Bo, we talked all about this last show. I mean, good for him. He got paid and he's been a team player and he's been involved in all of that. But like, what a disaster by the Ticats to spend the money on him. I mean, looking back now, I think we were both pretty down on it when it happened, but hindsight now, it looks even worse.
Yeah, I think you could safely add Bo to, even though he's played better statistically this year, I think you can add him to that list of, Ticats quarterbacks that they brought in, like high-profile quarterbacks that they brought in the last 20 years that just have not worked out. You go back to Casey Printers. He was kind of like, an American Nathan Rourke in a way, because he was a CFL MOP. He was an electric player and then went down and played with Kansas City, I believe, in the NFL, then came back, and the Ticats gave him a massive contract that I think he played 2 years with the Ticats. They were miserable, didn't live up to it at all. Jason Moss also flopped as a member of the Ticats because he was a guy that saw a lot of action with Ricky Ray there, getting injured sometimes in Edmonton. I believe Ricky Ray also had some time in the NFL, so Moss got a lot of playing time there. But after his time in Edmonton, he ends up in Hamilton for a year, and that was an abject disaster. So, I mean, the Ticats just have a history of this. They just, unfortunately, with some franchises, I would compare them to the Chicago Bears, because the Chicago Bears, hopefully with Caleb Williams, it will work out for them. But historically, they don't have a very good history with quarterbacks, right? You look at you think of the greatest players in the history of the Chicago Bears, and much like the Ticats, most of those players are defensive players. I think most of those legendary players, you think of Angelo Mosca, Grover Covington, I think those are some of the biggest names you think of when you think of the Ticats all time, but you don't really think of those quarterbacks. It just hasn't come easy for this franchise, and they just haven't been able to really develop many from within, and I think that's a major problem for them.
The other thing here, just talking, and we'll touch on the other two games before we get out of here, but McLeod Did McLeod stuff. Are we back to quarterback controversy here? Does Trey Ford come back? When he has the ribs and all that, because you almost want McLeod to come in and just kind of not do great. I don't know. I feel like we're always trying to kind of defend the Trey Ford thing here. What do you make of that and the Elks? What do they do?
I think Trey Ford proved that he is the starting quarterback of this team. I think he really did really save their season. If you look at it, they're now a 3-7 football team. They're right in the thick of things. If they can, win these games against Calgary in the Labor Day game and the Labor Day rematch, it's a whole new season for the Elks. And I think, when Trey Ford gets back, he will be given the reins to do so. But it was good to see McLeod play well in this game, even though it was against my team. I think he has shown played well in the fourth quarter of games a lot of the time this year. You look at their first 4 weeks, I think it was all very close losses, and they just did not play well down the stretch. He had, a bad sack or a bad turnover at an inopportune time. So I don't think McLeod has played terrible this year on the whole, but it was really good to see him play a very complete ball game in this game.
All right. Anything else from that one, or do you want to kind of put that in the back of the rearview mirror?
No, I think that's pretty much it for that one.
All right. So we saw this. Even last year, maybe you wouldn't think early in the season that this would have been, but this is two heavy hitters here, right? Saskatchewan hosted Montreal here. Davis Alexander playing for Cody. We had the whole command center thing here, the stepping out of bounds. I miss the whole. Right, the fumble and was it a fumble? It kind of I missed, right? Was that 2 weeks ago? I kind of missed that whole thing. I mean, I tracked all that, but now this. First off, thoughts on the command center, because that has really kind of been, what was it last year was the stats on the CFL page and kind of all that. This year, it seems like that's one of the prevailing storylines. Davis Alexander was out of bounds, right?
Yeah. And for some reason, they weren't showing that second frame or that next frame of that play on the replay. But the command center definitely should have had access to that. I don't understand how that was ruled, a touchdown still. But at the end of the day, I don't feel too bad for Saskatchewan, just given the fact that they had many opportunities to win this game. And the fact that they left many points on the board, just settling for field goals. And then their kicker missed several. I think it was Brett Lawler was 3 of 7, and that's really the game right there. So don't feel too bad about them. But in terms of the command center, I think that, a couple weeks ago, I think they got the calls right in that Saskatchewan and Ottawa game that ended up in a tie. It was very close, and it was by the letter of the law. I don't think that should be a penalty if you cut a defender and they roll into the quarterback's legs. I do not think that should be roughing the passer because obviously the defender can't really control where they're going when they get cut like that. But unfortunately, that is the rule. So I think they got the call right there, and I think they got the pass interference call right, the one that would have won Ottawa the game. It was very close, like I said, but he was there, had second early. So I think they got that right. But my problem with the command center is that as someone that watches the CFL all the time, I still can't tell you exactly when the command center can step into, change plays. Like what authority do they have? I'm always shocked when they step in to make a ruling on a play. I'm like, I didn't know they could change that. So as someone that watches the league so much, I don't even understand that. So I can imagine it'd be very confusing to fans that are watching the games, on a relatively less basis.
Well, and it's kind of the thing like in Major League Baseball where some plays can be some things can be reviewed and some things can't. You never why can't we review that or whatever? You'll know Tim Capper, a famous Alouettes fan, he wasn't out of bounds. So don't worry. Of course, Tim the Alouettes fan he wasn't out of bounds. But shout out here, and I did see this friend of the show, James Letcher, with the missed field goal, TD return. That was great, and that was an epic shot. And then following that, and really, and you just felt like you were living in the moment with all that, right? Really feel like, okay, I got my Apple Vision Pro. That's the kind of stuff you want to watch on that. I'm literally feel like I'm on the field, kind of flying over that. I forgot about the command center with the couple of the overtime game and kind of all of that stuff. In terms of the game itself, I had something else, so I'm kind of forgetting I was going to say here. This was a close one. Trevor Harris, everything else. Davis holding the fort enough for Cody being out. Alouettes really just seem like untouchable at this point.
Yeah, they are a very, very, very well-rounded team, and it feels like they don't have a weakness. They got good coaching. They have good quarterback depth, as it's been proven here. They can run the ball. They can, even though they didn't run the ball quite well in this game, they can still win, even when they can't run the ball by, throwing to their various receivers. And they just added Austin Mack back today. That's another big piece of news as well that we forgot to mention. So they've just been tremendously impressive this year. It's really been, really impressive to see. I think that defensively, they're also just extremely talented. We really saw that down the stretch this year. I didn't know if that was going to be a sustainable aspect of this team this year, just given the fact that usually teams that go on a defensive heater, they don't tend to, carry that over as much into the next seasons as much as like a great offense would. But they have definitely proven me wrong in that regard. And the offense has looked even better than they have. But honestly, much better than they did last year. So just tremendously impressive. And I really like Davis Alexander. I mean, he hasn't been perfect in these starts that he's had, but you could tell when the games have gotten in doubt, he has made the plays necessary to win, and he has all the tools. Really like his mobility. He has good size, and he just has that, kind of it factor. He's willing to put his body on the line and make plays. And I've just been really impressed with him. And I think in a couple of years, or as soon as next year, who knows, he could be a real player in this league and compete for a starting job somewhere.
Yeah, he had a couple of hits he was running. I'm like, man, you really need to learn how to get down here. I mean, it's good, but you do get that. You get these young quarterbacks coming like, I'm gonna run, okay. And you saw that, Nathan holding the ball. We don't need to get on the Nathan thing again, but I'm like, I don't know. You need to do a little bit more with that. Saskatchewan here. So they drop. What's Saskatchewan now? 5-4, not quite as unstoppable as we thought. They got the tie on there.
5-1.
Yeah. So how do you feel about that? Yeah. The command center tie, everything. How do you feel about this? Top in the West by what, 1 point?
Yep. It's like I said, it's anybody's ball game now in the West, just given the fact that what's transpired over the last couple of weeks, BC and Saskatchewan really falling back to the pack. Saskatchewan, I think it was kind of expected, just given the Trevor Harris injury. They did get a couple of wins in there, but enough to stay on top of the West. But really they needed him back, and I think that's really important. And I thought he looked really good in this game. They just didn't really put the ball in the end zone as much as they needed to. And like I said, I think that really cost them the game because their kicker just honestly, and Brett Lawler has usually been a reliable kicker, but he just he couldn't hit a broadside of a barn in this game, really. So I think, going forward, Saskatchewan should be a pretty good team. They got a big test coming up on Thursday. I believe it's on the road in Toronto against Chad Kelly and the Argos. So it should be very interesting to see how they respond to that, and if they can get enough wins here to stay on top and be in possession for a home playoff game down the stretch. But I think I really like what I've seen from them in general. I think they've been competitive almost every week. Yes, they should have probably won that game against Saskatchewan, but against Ottawa a few weeks ago. But at the end of the day, I think they just didn't do enough to really deserve to win that game, because one thing that's really overshadowed by the tie in that one, going back to a couple of weeks ago, is the fact that it was like a 3-0 game at the half, and it was a really, really ugly game up until the last, 7 minutes of the fourth quarter. Then both offenses kind of woke up. So I think, Trevor Harris being back is just so important for this team, and it's just a whole different. The way I view that team is just completely different with him at the helm.
And then, like you said, I think that was the other thing I was going to say. You can talk about the review and the command center all you want, but Brett Lawler makes those field goals. This is, it's a totally different thing. Any reasoning for that? I mean, what were they? They were in Saskatchewan, right? Like, certainly he kind of knows the stadium and wind conditions, all that. So I mean, just it seemed really kind of, like you said, uncharacteristic performance from him.
Yeah, it was. I don't really know how to explain it. I think that, like I said, he's been a very reliable kicker throughout his CFL career, but this will certainly kill his season average. I think he's right now at the bottom after last week's games in terms of field goal percentage among the active kickers in the league. So we'll see how he responds to this, but just because it's the one game, I'm not overly concerned as of yet.
All right, last thing here. Mazzoli comes back, hasn't played football in a year, right? We lived through all that with the Garrett Marino and kind of everything right last year. They win again, right, with a Lewis Ward kickoff or a walk-off field goal and all of that. Mazzoli, I saw his interview afterward and crying and all of that. Great to see him come back. Great to see him, huge. I mean, he had to come back from injury twice. All this thoughts on that? Because this was buried here so many days ago here earlier in the last week, but pretty cool story.
Yeah, and it surprisingly ended up being the game of the week. It ended up being a very entertaining game that went right down to the wire. I think Mazzoli looked very healthy. He looked like a guy that was just having fun out there. I think he was, had a couple of plays where he scrambled around. He had that one touchdown where they were inside the 10-yard line where he really had to improvise and do a little shovel pass that ended up going to Dedmon for the touchdown. So it was really good to see him out there having fun again and doing it alongside Braylon Addison, who's had his own injury troubles as well. Had a big role in this game. So for this game to end the way it did, I think it was just a really exciting game. I think that, Calgary once again ends up on the wrong side of a very close game. They've been in almost every game this year, but Ottawa's just kind of been the opposite of that, where they've been able to, squeak out these close games. So I think that, it's been really impressive to see the Redblacks have a resurgence this year. All of a sudden up to 6 wins, only 2 losses on the season, and one of those against Montreal. So I think, there's a team that can make some noise down the stretch here now that they have the confidence and they know that they only need a few more wins really to guarantee themselves a playoff spot.
It's interesting you say you thought it was the game of the week. I thought all the games were really exciting. Even the game last night with the Winnipeg and BC playing, that at least was much-watched television just because, oh my God, this is just, it's such a train wreck here. I saw Morley Scott tweet out today, is the West Division the new East Division, where it's kind of a bunch of mid-teams and not a lot of separation. But what a world with Ottawa here sitting at second in the East. They got to feel great about that. Do we ride Mazzoli now? What's Drew Brown's situation? Because, Mazzoli's, I think he's transitioning to be more of a mentor, right? I think they were talking during the broadcast, he wants to get into coaching after this. He wants to be involved. And obviously he knows his time is limited just because of age, of injuries and all that. But what do you think they make there? And if nothing else, him being around the team has to be great in terms of leadership and chemistry and kind of all that stuff.
Well, I think what Mazzoli's experience allows them to do is not rush Drew Brown back, but I think when Drew Brown is ready to return, they have to give him the job because I think he did get this team to 5-2 or something like that by the time he got hurt. So I think he's a guy that you could build around. I think he's shown enough to for them to really turn to him going forward, and I think Mazzoli, just given the fact of his health history, I think they would be wise to really ride him much farther. I think, in the short term, I think he's a great option. He's a guy that's really had experience, especially within that offense, because one thing that hasn't really been talked about as much is that Tommy Condell is the offensive coordinator in Ottawa. And obviously Mazzoli had a lot of success in that scheme, going back to his time with Hamilton. So I think, it was a really good performance from Mazzoli. Really happy to see him back out there. But I think Drew Brown is, it's still his team going forward because he's gotten them to where they are at this point of the season.
But think about Ottawa even last year with the crumb sanity of it all and no quarterback really. And now they've got, Mazzoli, kind of like you said, can ride, kind of be that calming presence here. We get Drew Brown back. He's great. We're kind of seeing this influx now with the Trey Ford, Nathan coming back. I think Jim Mullen was tweeting out, what if you get Curtis in the CFL here in a couple of years, Curtis Rourke, you really could kind of see this influx that we need as Bo kind of transitions out. And I think Trevor Harris will kind of find his way out here. I think we did good today. A lot of news I think we went through. It wasn't too negative. Like I said, we'll probably be off for the other 2 weeks. And then I think we'll probably be riding good there. So I think the September 9th, I think we'll go off through all that stuff, and we'll figure it out. But in the meantime, I'm always around. Jason, anything else from you? I appreciate, flexibility is back and forth, but this was good. Kind of stop down today and do a kind of a big recap of everything.
No, really great time as always. I always enjoy talking CFL football. I mean, I'm not uploading on the channel recently, but it's always good to get together and do these shows on a weekly basis and talk some CFL football, because I think it's been a really exciting season.
It has been. I've really enjoyed, like I said, being able to watch everything. We'll get back in, and then once the UFL stuff kicks up here in the fall, we'll start doing the Friday episodes again. But right now, this is perfect. This is kind of all the schedule allows for both Jason and I. So we appreciate it. Like I said, like and subscribe. We'll see you guys here in a couple weeks. And Abdul, here, send me a DM. We'll talk through job postings, but send me that. We don't have time for that today, but send me a DM. We'll get to all that. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks.